All right, today we are diving deep into a major medical investigation called the Promising Study. And really, it's a story all about one of the most high-stakes questions you can ask inside an intensive care unit. Just think about that for a second. How do you get a patient safely off a life support breathing machine? It is this moment that's just packed with hope, but also so much risk. If you do it too soon, the patient could have a major setback. But if you wait too long, you're risking things like muscle weakness or even serious infections. You know, this whole process is called weaning, and getting it right is, well, it's everything. Being on a ventilator for too long is linked to all sorts of complications, and even a higher risk of death. So the pressure is really on to find the absolute best way to help patients start breathing for themselves again. And that led a group of researchers to ask a really interesting question. Could there be a smarter kind of ventilator? You know, one that works more in sync with the patient. Could that get them off the machine faster and more safely? To figure that out, they launched a massive scientific investigation. And in this big showdown, they focused on two main contenders. In one corner, you've got the current standard of care. It's called pressure support ventilation, or PSV. And in the other corner, you have the challenger, a more modern, adaptive mode called proportional assist ventilation, or PAV+. So how does the standard method, PSV, actually work? Well, the best way to think about it is like cruise control for your breathing. A doctor or a nurse sets a fixed level of pressure, and the machine delivers that exact same amount of help with every single breath the patient tries to take. It's reliable, it's straightforward, but it's not very flexible. It doesn't really adapt to what the patient needs moment to moment. Now, PAV Plus is totally different. Instead of cruise control, think of it more like power steering for your lungs. It actively senses how hard the patient is trying to breathe, and it adjusts the help it gives in real time. So if the patient takes a bigger, deeper breath, the ventilator gives more help. If they take a smaller one, it backs off. The whole theory was that this smarter, more synchronized approach would be way better for the patient. So, to put this whole theory to the test, researchers from all over the world teamed up to create the PROMIZING study. And this wasn't some casual observation. Oh no, this was a super rigorous, randomized controlled trial, which is really the gold standard for getting medical evidence. And the scale of this thing was huge. We're talking about 573 critically ill patients, each one randomly assigned to be weaned using either the standard PSV method or this new, smarter PAV Plus method. And this was a truly global effort. It wasn't just one hospital doing all the work. It was a whole network of ICUs from Canada and Spain to France and Saudi Arabia, all collaborating to find an answer. Now, the researchers were incredibly meticulous about who they included in the study. They had this multi-step process to find the exact right patients. They had to be stable enough to start weaning, but, and this is the key part, they also had to have just failed a test that would have meant they were ready to come off the ventilator completely. So these were literally the patients who are stuck in that difficult in-between weaning phase. Okay, so every good investigation needs a plot twist, right? Well, about 4 years into this massive study, the researchers ran into a serious problem. The main clue they were following, their primary objective, it wasn't giving them the information they needed. See, their original goal way back in 2015 was to measure something called ventilator-free days. Basically, counting how many days a patient was alive and breathing on their own by day 21. But they started to realize this measurement just wasn't sensitive enough. So in 2019, they made a really bold move. They changed their main goal to measure time to successful liberation. Basically, how long did it actually take to get a patient off that ventilator for good? And they were incredibly open about this change. In their official protocol update, they basically said, hey, we looked at the early data and we've realized our original measurement just isn't the right tool for this job. The old metric was kind of muddying the waters by lumping patients who passed away with those who were just on the ventilator for a long time. And honestly, this move shows you exactly how good science is supposed to work. It's not about stubbornly sticking to your original plan no matter what. It's about being willing to question your own methods and having the courage to change course when the evidence tells you to. All right, so after all those years of work, all those hours of patient care, and that major mid-study correction, what was the final verdict? Did the so-called smarter ventilator actually live up to its promise? The answer really came down to a single number: the hazard ratio. In a head-to-head race like this, a ratio of exactly 1.0 means it's a perfect tie. The final result for PAV plus versus PSV, it was 0.96. I mean, that is so incredibly close to 1.0 that it's considered statistically insignificant. It was a photo finish, a virtual tie. Despite all the advanced technology and the compelling theory behind it, PAV Plus just didn't get patients off the ventilator any faster than the old standard PSV. But the story doesn't quite end there. The researchers also looked at the human side of things. They actually asked the doctors and nurses, hey, how did you feel using these two different methods? And the results were pretty interesting. 85% of them said the standard PSV was easy to use, but only 75% said the same for the more complex PAV+. So a small but definite win for simplicity. And when they looked at all the other clues in the data, it just kept telling the same story. There were no real differences in bad side effects, no difference in mortality rates. Even the amount of sedative medication patients needed was about the same. It was a draw, right across the board. Both methods were equally safe and effective. So you're probably asking yourself, okay, if it was a tie, was all that effort and money really worth it? And the answer is absolutely yes. Because a result like this, even a null result, is actually incredibly valuable in medicine. It helps us answer a really important question. The big takeaway here is that we need to shift our thinking. Instead of searching for one single winner, the PROMIZING study proved that doctors now have two equally safe and effective options. The goal isn't to find the one superior method. It's about building a better clinical toolbox. PAV Plus might still be the absolute perfect tool for a specific kind of patient. The real future is about personalizing that choice. And that's really the true value of all this work. The PROMIZING study might not have found the one single key that unlocks the whole puzzle of ventilator weaning. But what it did do is give doctors a much more detailed and accurate map of the room they're working in. And in the life-or-death world of the ICU, that kind of clarity can make all the difference.